So I recently bought some new plectrums, or picks as most people call them. How exciting can that be? But they're kind of interesting. They're these things called Attak picks. So naturally that's spelled with two Ks, Attak, A-T-T-A-K-P-I-K. What's intriguing about them is the design's a bit different than conventional picks or the picks that we're used to, and that's their whole marketing pitch, is that, you know, the pick has been around forever, no one's ever done anything with it to change it, so maybe it's time we looked at that. Maybe it isn't. Why change things that work fine? They have kind of ridges and beveling and outcroppings that allow a lot more friction and a lot sharper a contact with the string. There's 3 different types that they offer. I was really mainly curious about one, but they did this deal where you can buy a pack of 3, so I did that and I wanted to try them out. Now, usually I'm using something pretty straightforward, like a DUNLOP medium, which has served me well. It's just fine. You can strum with this, you can play lead, and that's kind of my style. I'm a singer-songwriter, kind of ballad meets indie, with a little bit of grunge and stuff thrown in there, and some kind of goth and Americana overtones. So I'm often going from accompanying myself with not too complicated chord structures and voicings to, if I'm playing with a band, I'll break into a solo. So I need to be able to kind of go back and forth between those 2 modes. So this is being a good compromise. It works well on the acoustic, it works on the electric. That's fine. I've tried different plectrums over the years. One of my favorite innovations was the Stubby, this tiny little plectrum, and the big Stubby is kind of a bigger version, and they're really solid and very rigid. They're the hardest plectrums I've ever played with, and for a while I thought these were super cool, but I've kind of gravitated back towards these kind of Jim Dunlop style, the sort of basic style. So, you know, why change it up? Well, I was kind of just interested. I kept seeing ads on Facebook, I kept seeing ads online talking about how these revolutionize your sound, and I thought, okay, they're a little pricey. Picks are always pricier than you expect them to be, but these are about $3.33 each to buy these and have them shipped. If you don't buy them in the guitar store, I think it was $14 or something, so not the cheapest plectrums you're ever going to buy, but I'm always interested in spending a few dollars more just to try something new and see what I think about it. Now, as I said, there are 3 different types of Attak picks. The signature model, also called the Attak. How they describe this sound, it brings out 12-string harmonics on your 6-string guitar, and I kind of agree with that to a degree. I mean, it's not going to sound like a 12-string. It doesn't have 12 strings, it doesn't have an extra octave on top of the lower strings and a doubling of the other strings, but because it's crenellated or bevelated, because it has those raised structures on top of on the surface of the plectrum, when you strike the guitar, it does something a bit different to the waveform, and in a way you're almost striking strings more than once. With a standard plectrum, you strike it and you're done, whereas with this, the fact that there are kind of 3 rows of raised structures on the surface of the Attak means that technically you could actually strike it with each of those and then with the tip of the plectrum, so you could kind of strike it 4 times. But when you're picking faster or strumming faster, it's probably not 4 times per string, but you can kind of hear something going on there, which makes it sound a little bit richer and approaching the kind of sound that 12 string would give you, although it's not really true 12 string sound. So I agree with that. I do think it sounds pretty cool. Is it better than the standard sound I get out of my standard plectrum? No, I don't think it's better or worse. I think it's different, and it offers a fresh approach, and it's kind of interesting, and I think that's kind of what we as musicians are looking for, is something new. It doesn't have to be, oh, this is better, I'm not using the old stuff. It just has to feel like, oh, this is a nice sound that I want to play with. They also say that the open chords get more compressed together and each note is still kind of clear. I do feel like playing open strings on the acoustic guitar, this is where this thing really comes into its own and feels like you're offering something different and special. And for me, $3.33 to just get that slightly different ringing, chorusy kind of sound out of a plectrum, I think that was worth it for me. So I'd recommend these. Try them out, see what you think. Love to see what your comments are. It mentions that it adds a somewhat percussive sound. Totally agree. There's definitely a kind of a percussive thing. So it whether that's good or bad, I don't know. It definitely adds something to the sound, which is kind of cool. It says it cuts through reverb on electric guitars while evening out chord extensions. I tried with the reverb and honestly didn't necessarily feel that I was noticing any major difference there. The standard plectrum this plectrum, they kind of sounded the same in terms of how it came through the reverb. I didn't do extensive testing with multiple types of reverb or with a backing track and try to do lead and see if the lead stood out more. So there's more experimentation that you could do, but it didn't immediately strike me as a major difference. The next one they have is called the Ambush, which looks a little bit like the Attak. The major difference that I can see is, whereas the Attak has 3 rows of raised structures, one of which is just a single raised structure and the other 2 behind it are 3 each. So you've got this kind of fully formed triangle shape. The Ambush is more of a V shape. It has 3 rows, but it's not fully filled in. So it's really just 1 on the tip and then 2 on the outer edges of that V formation on the 2 following rows. So there's less structures, but they're arranged in a similar kind of approach. So you get a similar type of brightening effect, and that's what it talks about on the website. It says similar effect to the Attak, but more impact, creating more percussive sound. And I do feel like that, strangely, even though there are less structures, it kind of gets caught more on the strings, and the structures are a little different visually. The Attak seems like it would do more damage in terms of catching on the strings, but the Ambush I find actually gets caught a bit more. It says great for blues on electric guitar because it gives each note purpose and evens out the volume of each note. How do you measure how much purpose a note was given? I think some of these are definitely marketing friendly terms and less kind of easy to understand. But playing some blues, I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, I'm not a massive blues guitarist. I do love to play some blues, but there are so many amazing players out there that it's kind of daunting. I try to stick to what I'm better at, so I don't tend to come out in the open with it too much. But just crunching away through some blues is one way that I always test equipment in all these videos. So you'll hear me attempting blues a lot of the time in these videos. I do feel something happening when I use this plectrum. It definitely feels, maybe purpose is the right word, because I'm thinking of words like piercing, but that seems too shrill, or it has more attack. It's a bit more searing in a good way. The notes stand out from each other, even though they don't get too trebly or distinct. They still flow, but there's something about it that just has a little more punch to it. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting when I'm playing with this, but it takes some mastering because it does tend to get stuck on the string a little bit more. You've got to really pick a little harder, but there's something to that. I think this requires a bit more experimentation. It also apparently thickens the lower harmonics, which gives it a heavier sound and a bigger feel. Comparing this one to a standard pick, I did feel like there was a bit more kind of in the middle. There's a bit more kind of fuller in the middle and maybe not so much the lower end, but it did sonically change the feel of the chords a little bit, enough that I could kind of distinguish a difference, whether it was a difference that's so enticing that I would be drawn to the pick. I'm not 100% sure. The third type that they have is called the Blade, and this one is a little different. It does again have rows of raised structures. It does again have rows of kind of raised structures. It's 4 rows. They're just kind of a straight line. It's like furrows in a plowed field maybe, or corrugated iron or something like that. And this was my least favorite of the 3. It says it harmonically enhances the mid-range frequencies, and apparently that's where the clarity and punch sits for guitars, according to the marketing material on the website. I'm not really sure how to interpret that. It says the semi-flex structure allows the player to maintain ability to sweep and tremolo pick, and I don't do a whole lot of tremolo or sweeping. If it's not a style I've mastered, whatever degree of that I can do with this plectrum, I don't feel like there's a major difference in what's available with this. I almost feel this just restricts all the playing. It does tend to get a little more caught, certainly on the treble strings, so it requires a bit more, give and push to do things. So I don't really know what that means. I didn't feel any advantage or any sense of, this is easier to tremolo pick than some of the other picks that they offer. One of the bullet points mentions a better fit for distorted and overdriven sounds, and I tried that. I tried distortion on all of the different picks, but for this one I was just trying to hear what is the difference, and I didn't really feel like there was any significant difference in how the overdrive sounded. I tried 2 different pedals. One, I guess, is more of an overdrive, and one is more of a distortion pedal. I didn't really come away thinking, I get what that means, or that makes sense to me, or I hear a difference. It also talked about a kind of a wah-wah effect when playing individual notes with an overdriven effect, but I didn't really hear that either. It mentioned mitigating muddiness of lower strings. I do feel like there's a bit of a difference on the lower strings, but I couldn't really tell whether it's less or more muddy. It just sounded a bit different. So this was my least favorite, both acoustic and electric. I just didn't feel like I got anything major out of it. The ambush I kind of enjoyed, mainly on the blues picking. I don't know why just specifically blues they talk about, but I don't also know why when I tried attempting a solo from a song by The Cure or just noodling around, why they didn't quite give me the same satisfaction as playing blues with this. But it seems like there is something to it. But of the three, the one that seemed worth the investment, and again, this is only like $3.33, which is a bit pricey for a plectrum, but it's not a whole lot of money, right? So less than $5. I do feel like this, the Attak, the signature brand model of this vendor, is the one that's most interesting to me. It definitely added something different to the sound. Chords sound a bit fuller, a bit more resonant. It's a little more approaching the 12-string chorus kind of sound, and a little more percussion and attack, and just a little more punch on individual notes. Is it better than standard plectrums? I don't know, but is it worth having one of these in your arsenal and trying and playing with it? I definitely think so. So having said all that, let's just have a listen to it. I played around a little bit. I've used my Attak Mini acoustic guitar, 6-string, steel string, and I've used my Fender Stratocaster, and that's going into a practice Vox amp. For testing out some of the reverb, I just used a preset reverb on the amp. And then for overdrive and distortion, I have my Timmy and my vintage Rat reissue. So let's have a listen to what these different picks sound like on acoustic and electric, with some chords, some individual notes, a little bit of noodling and soloing, and some distortion and a little bit of scattered reverb thrown in. So that's what I got this week. Love to hear your thoughts. As always, if you like what you see in the channel, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and use the bell icon so you're notified when I post new content. And I'll see you again in the next video.